Welcome everyone once again to another episode of Explore Grant County. Today my guest is the Grant County Superintendent of Schools, Mitch Webster. How are you doing today?
Doing good, JR. Good to see you.
It's great to have you here braving the kind of sleet and freezing rain out there. We appreciate you coming on.
Well, thank you very much. And this was one of those days. It's a tough call. Temperature right around 33, 32 degrees, rain. I'm told there's sleet and ice in some places where our guys have been out on the road. So we decided this would be an at-home learning day for students because of that.
Yeah, my wife is from the Shear area, and you can pretty much always guarantee right through there.
Absolutely.
So I do thank you for coming and spending some time with us. Mm-hmm. We've got a lot of questions. Some of the people have asked us questions. So we're going to start right off with the big news that the mask mandate has been lifted in Grant County schools, and that starts...
Tomorrow will be the last day that we will ask students to wear masks.
Okay. So can you take me behind the decision-making of it?
Sure. As a matter of fact, let me go back to the fall when we first put the mask mandate in place. And I will tell you, we were one of the last counties actually we held out as long as we could. We had summer school without masks, and we started school without masks, and I really was hoping we could do that. What had happened, these variants that none of us were aware of, we had the Omicron, before that we had the Delta, they spread like wildfire. And we were following the guidelines on quarantining, and we were quarantining so many kids and staff members that we were very close to not being able to keep our schools open. So in order to be able to comply with the quarantine guidelines that we were to follow, we had to put in place what was called a universal mask mandate. If you put in a universal mask mandate, that means if you and I are this close to one another and we both have masks on and you test positive, I don't have to quarantine. We felt that was a no-brainer. As much as I dislike masks, I'm not. I do think they work, but I hate wearing them. They just seem like they're always in my way when I have one on. But my main objective was to keep our schools open and keep our kids in school. So that's why we instituted it, and we kept it until it looked like there is a national, state, and local trend of the numbers going down to the point we feel we can lift it. And we wanted to lift it when we could lift it without 5 or 6 or 8 different restrictions still placed on there. We have 2 minimal things that we'll look at. If you test positive after we lift the mask mandate, we ask you to quarantine until your physician says it's safe for you to come back to school. And if you are exposed to someone who tests positive, we ask you, if you develop symptoms, to get a test in order to remain in school. So we've kept it relatively simple.
Yeah, so good. So that was actually my next question going into that. So the physician lifting that is solely based on the physician. I mean, I know you're not a doctor, but is that like the doctor says you have a negative test, or you're now negative, or you're not showing symptoms? What were the thoughts behind that?
I guess doctors would use a variety of things to determine that. But again, because I'm not a doctor, and I don't feel comfortable saying, well, after 3 days or 5 days you can come back. Maybe they can, maybe they cannot. Now I would allow those that we have in our clinics at school that have the proper background to make that decision. So a parent wouldn't necessarily have to take their child to the doctor. If the folks we have in our school-based clinics could make that decision for us, I'm fine with that too.
Okay.
I want to keep it as simple as possible.
And that's good because, there's a lot of questions. People have a lot of questions. Sure. That's why we're doing this interview, to try to inform and enlighten and let everyone know what the actual rules in place are. So the second part of that was, I'm positive, you're not. If you don't show a symptom, then you do not have to quarantine. So It's not until you show that symptom that you would have to quarantine.
Absolutely. And the reason that I wanted to go that route, when we were quarantining large numbers of kids, most of those kids didn't test positive. They were exposed, but they didn't test positive. And they could have been in school. Unfortunately, we were following, well, I won't say unfortunately, but unfortunately, because we were following the guidelines, we were putting a lot of kids out of school that never did test positive. So we think we're at that point now that once you develop symptoms, then we would ask you to at least test. And then if you test positive, you're out until you get the physician okay to come back.
So at that point in time, I guess they would, if they have to go out, they would just follow the same, do the remote learning
Yes,
in school.
absolutely. Remote
or
learning,
out of school.
right? Remote learning is specifically for those students that are quarantined due to COVID, and that there's a little confusion there between, for example, today is what we call a non-traditional instructional day. This is
explain that. What does that mean?
A non-instructional, non-traditional instructional day. I've asked each principal at each school to determine with their staff what's the best way to provide instruction for students on days that we're out for example, ice or snow or cold weather or whatever it might be. For kindergartners, first graders, teachers were saying, we have these devices, but it's really not effective for our little ones. We would much rather prepare, if we know in advance, we'd much rather prepare pamphlets or worksheets or something that they can work on for their letter formation or whatever it is that they might be working at the younger grade. So I wanted each principal at each school to have that flexibility, working with their teachers to decide what is it we can have those students do on those days off. Now, if you're off because of COVID, then you go to the remote learning, which is our Schoology updates. That's so the remote learning now is specifically designed for those that are out with COVID.
Okay. Now you had talked about the teachers, so let's talk about the teachers and in the COVID policy. What happens to them? Are they following the same guidelines as the kids also?
Absolutely. I'm sorry. Yes.
Okay. No, that's all right. No,
Yes.
It's all part of the rolling in the question. So they're the same thing. If they're near a kid that tests positive, as long as they don't show symptoms, they don't have to quarantine.
Exactly. And those that feel that they still need to wear a mask, we certainly would encourage it. I would highly encourage it if you're going to be in a large group setting or something, if you want to wear one. And because I've heard people say, which I understand this, well, it should be a choice, and if they want to, they can, and if they don't want to, they shouldn't have to. Here was the thing with that. If we would have done that during this time with the vast spread, and let's say I chose not to wear one, you chose to wear one, and I had COVID, and you were within 3 feet of me, because we didn't have a universal mask mandate in place, you would still have to quarantine, even though you wore a mask, because I didn't.
So what I'm kind of gathering then is it wasn't so much the mask as a universal policy for the quarantine.
Absolutely.
So that's kind of what you came up with, was this quarantine policy.
Absolutely. It was made very clear to us if we had a universal mask mandate in place, then quarantines, there were no quarantines.
Okay.
That kept us in school. That kept our schools open.
And I don't know if you did see this. So my question was, with the masks, and you're encouraging everyone to wear the masks, the health department has put out that there's only 2 masks that offer protection. I don't know if you saw it or not. That's the N95 or the surgical. Anything else offers 0% protection. So is that something that you have looked at or thought about? Because if you're just wearing something that offers no protection, I mean, the chances I can still get COVID, correct?
Right.
And that's what shocked everyone, because they were like, oh, we're wearing these masks. Hey, we're all fine. But here to come out that there was no protection, 0, which shocked me, because everyone had said, well, it lowers it, maybe by 50% or helps. But they're literally saying now that there's no protection at all. So let's say a mask mandate has to come back because we make it through the summer. Next year we go into fall, cases pick up again or whatever. Is that something that you would have to look at then and say, well, we're going to have to do surgical or N95 since the masks don't offer any protection?
I would only do that if that was a directive that we had to follow. And I will follow directives, even ones I don't agree with. And I'll give you an example. Personally, myself, I typically wear the gaiters, which you wear them and pull them up. Not from what we've been told, maybe they're not as effective. But I mean, I've avoided COVID to this point, and I've been around several people that had it, and that's what I was wearing, was the gaiter. So I do think, obviously, the ones that you're talking about are more effective. But I think anything that you have has to help to some degree. And earlier, when there was an outbreak, I remember Dr. Fauci saying, anything you wear is better than nothing.
Except now that's
now they've changed
true.
that. But I would be okay with anything a student would want to wear myself, unless we had that directive.
And that would come from
the CDC,
CDC,
and then our DHHR would follow up on that.
So that's a good question. So your advice, does that come from the CDC or from the local health department? Like, when you said you would, unless someone said that, who would be that? Would that be just the CDC comes out and says everyone needs to wear masks again? That's what you go.
Yeah, if that came out, we would do that. Okay. If it was just a suggestion or a recommendation, again, I would hold out as long as I possibly could. It like I said, it kept us in schools, and I can see I really can see both sides of this. I really can. The part that bothers me are those young kids when we are teaching them their letter sounds. A lot of that is just one example. I was
going to ask you about that, actually.
A lot of the teachers are trained on something called lips, and lips means that the student watches your mouth as you pronounce out those sounds, and with masks, that's been very difficult to do.
So, question about that then. Is there something that we can do? Well, I guess I should first ask, do you think that our younger kids are behind, well, any of the kids are behind because of that? A. B, if they are, how can we catch them up?
That's a very good question. And I think, obviously, they are behind to some degree. We have several things in place to allow them to catch up. One is we have an after-school program, and students can stay after school. And we have teachers there to tutor them or help them with their homework and so forth. We had a very effective summer school program last year to help with catch up, and we're going to have that in place again this year. So between the after school and the summer school, and the emphasis the teachers are placing on reteaching, and the understanding that Rome wasn't built in a day, and we have lost, we can make it up, but we have to have a variety of things in place, as I've mentioned, to make it up over time. Our tests that we're doing with our students, our benchmark tests, show us making gains. So we're slowly gaining back where we think they should be.
And in case anyone's interested in the after school or summer school, who would they contact?
They can contact, for the after school, they can contact the principal of that building. For after school, Vanessa Harlow at the Board of Education.
Okay, perfect. So now let's go on to a next topic that is very near and dear to my heart. We have for so long pushed college, has to be college. And now when I go to get a plumber, electrician, a carpenter, good luck trying to find one, because there's very few and they're in high demand.
Absolutely. So
there seems to be a little more push. I know the Chamber of Commerce has developed something to try to push for trade schools. Explain to me the trade school situation there with South Branch Career Technical Center.
Well, they do an excellent job there. Shelley Kreitz, Julie Kodalaw, and the entire staff, and what they prepare our students to do. If I had to do all over again, I think I would have my own two kids, even if they decided they were college bound, to go there and develop some type of craft. I think that would be well worth it. What we have done, and I have always felt for a long time, that we have not made school has not been designed to meet the needs of those kids who don't want to go to college, and they lose interest, particularly in that middle school age. That was the age that I was most concerned about, that 7th and 8th grade age. So in talking with Shelley Kreitz and working with the personnel director and our finance director, we are going to fund a position next year that will allow our 7th and 8th graders to attend the vocational school and get an introduction to everything that it offers. We've never done that before. And I think that will keep our kids in school. I think it will cut down on discipline issues. I think it will give many of our kids in that 7th and 8th grade range a purpose and more of a desire to want to come to school and cut down on attendance issues. I could go on and on and on about it. I'm really excited about that.
That seems like a very good program. We need those people. And let's be honest, you graduate from there, you can go right out into the world and work.
Absolutely.
And there's a lot of work around here. I think we found that out during COVID when people started, remodeling their house because they were home looking at that saying, that really needs done, and building new buildings. So I think that's something that would definitely.
Well, I'll give you a good example personally. Last year, it was around Christmas time, half of the electric in my house went out. So I called a gentleman who does a lot of work for me, and I told him, and he said, well, that sounds like something you're going to need a certified electrician to come to your house, and he'll have to get with the power company and shut the electric off, and all of these things. Sounds like a breaker issue. And I said, well, who do I? I mean,
Yeah.
And he named one or two, and he said, if you can get them.
Yeah.
And that was hard to get that rectified. So that's just one example, like you're speaking to, and it's the same way if you need a plumber or what it might be. So if we can do that, if we can grow our own to come back into our community and have these kinds of positions, and if this getting them interested in the 7th and 8th grade, I think will have a huge impact.
Yeah, I like that program. That's kind of breaking news, I guess, for me. At least I hadn't heard it, so that's good. That's really good. So we did an easy one, the trade schools. Now on to a tough question.
Okay.
And I see that you come prepared. So people have asked, what is, let's first define it. What is bullying?
That's a really good way to ask the question. Let's first define it. And I want to make this perfectly clear to anybody listening. If bullying does occur in our schools, what we would definitely call bullying, and I'll define that for you here in just a minute, I want that taken care of and dealt with in the most prudent and manageable, and if I have to use the word severe consequences, as we need to. The unfortunate thing that's happened over time is so many things fall under the umbrella of bullying in people's minds that actually isn't bullying. I'll just give you one good example. When I was principal at Petersburg Elementary School, I remember a student coming up to me as we were lining up from recess, and he wanted me to take care of so-and-so because they were bullying him. And I said, well, how did he bully you? He said, they just beat us. And he said, ha, 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 we won. In his mind, he was being bullied. Ha, 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 we won. Now, that's picking. That's not good sportsmanship. That's not bullying. So for it to be bullying, it has to be targeted. It's targeted at an individual. It can be physical. It can be verbal. It can be through electronic devices. And it has to make that person so uncomfortable that they have fear coming to school, that something might happen to them.
So that's a good question. So how do you determine that? Because obviously kids have different levels of fear, but that doesn't mean or show fear. So that might not mean that they're afraid to come to school. They're just not showing it. So how do we find that out?
Once it's brought to and the first thing is it has to be brought to our attention. It has to be brought to the attention of either a teacher, a counselor, or the principal. Then they need to do the hard part, that investigation, to see if it does fall under that umbrella, if there are things taking place. And that's sometimes the hard part about that. You conduct interviews, and you have certain students telling you this, and then certain students telling you this, and then you have to try to take that information and make the best decision you can. Now, if it is determined it's bullying, sometimes it's handled at the school level through a suspension, in school, out of school, whatever it might be. If it's minor, if it's repetitive, it might make its way to my desk, and it might even require an expulsion. And I can't go into for confidentiality purposes. I can't go into any of those kind of things. But we have expelled students from Grand County schools because of these kinds of issues. When they reach my desk, and I may have to take it in front of the board, we have to make that determination. So those things do happen.
So you brought up a good point. So that is brought in front of the Board of Education then at that point.
Absolutely. And then we go into closed session because it's of the confidential matter. So it's handled behind closed doors, and it's handled properly. And the general public may not always know that because the person who's receiving the consequences also has privacy rights. So we're very careful not to cross the line on that also. But the part, I guess, that's the hardest part for me and brings about the most frustration is, and I'll just use one example. I don't read Facebook or the Petersburg Buzz. I just don't do it. My wife will occasionally show me pictures of the grandchildren that were sent to her on Facebook and so forth, but I generally stay away from it. And when people tell me that Facebook's blowing up or whatever, I don't even. However, if a credible person that I have developed a trusting relationship with brings something to my attention that they tell me is on Facebook that maybe I need to look into, I will look into it. I'll just give you one prime example. It was brought to my attention that last Friday there were knives in the boys' bathroom at Petersburg High School.
I was going to ask that.
And what is Petersburg High School doing to protect my child? Okay? This is serious. This is very serious. And I've not heard about it. We need to look into this. So I called the principal and the assistant principal, absolutely had zero knowledge of this happening. So I said, you need to do some interviews here. And I gave them the individuals' names that they needed to interview. I can't go into detail because of confidentiality purposes again, but here's what I can tell you. Zero credibility to that story. Zero. No truth whatsoever, but it's out there. Then people comment on it. They believe it's true. Zero credibility to that story. That's just one example that I can give you.
And that is part of the reason why we're doing this interview is we want to clear some things up because I had heard it. And I'm like, now, I'm older, so I went to school.
I am too.
Yeah, I know. And when I went to school, it was normal for kids to bring knives to school, and they had their guns in the back of their. I mean, that was a different age. So hearing it now, I was like, oh wow, I can't believe that Petersburg, but no truth whatsoever.
None whatsoever. Nothing. No truth whatsoever to that story. It's not like it was embellished or no truth to it whatsoever.
So you have a tough job.
It is a tough job.
You're trying to help our kids learn and everything, but then you're a private investigator trying to find out if the story is real or not.
That is true. And I want to say this: I've been in this county in the profession for going on 37 years. This county has some of the best people, some of the best students that you will find anywhere, and I have a tremendous love for the people I work with each and every day. I think it's a small percentage that wants to paint that cloud of nothing ever gets done or the schools aren't safe. Do we have issues? We have issues like every other county, and we try to address them when they're brought to our attention. And I will. If anybody, and I've told my principals this, any parent or any citizen that calls you and has a legitimate concern and ask you to look into, and they carry on a normal conversation with you, I want it looked into. And I've told people the same thing when they come to the board meetings. Call me after I follow this up, or I will get back with you. We need to do that because a lot of the concerns are legitimate, and we need to take care of those. And we will never try to cover anything up, or as some people say, sweep it under the table. But then again, some things are done in executive session that we just can't share. So if a bullying occurs in the school, what should that student or that parent do? Who should they contact? Should it be the principal first or a teacher first? Or I would recommend to that student that they go to the adult that they trust the most. In some cases, they might have that relationship with the principal. The problem is when you're a principal, and I know this myself, when you're a principal at a school with over 600 kids, you don't know every kid intimately, and they may not feel as comfortable coming to you as they would coming to a counselor or to their teacher. But I would recommend whatever adult they trust to take it to that adult. And then the adult then will bring it to the principal and ask the principal to investigate it.
Okay, so we found out what bullying is. So we've got the definition on that. What is the policy then in place for bullying?
It would depend after the investigation how severe the bullying was. It could be an automatic. It would just depend. It could be an automatic expulsion if it was severe enough. It could be a step-by-step process where we start with 3 days out of school suspension. If it happens again, you're up to 5. In other words, it could have incremental steps, or it could be automatic out depending on what the severity of it was. I'll tell you where we run into the biggest problem with bullying. 95% of our bullying issues, and before I did this interview, I asked the principals to confirm this with me. 95% of our bullying issues that fall under that true definition of bullying are social media comments back and forth from students away from school.
So that doesn't fall under the school
It really
purview.
doesn't. But I want to tell you what, our principals go out of their way to still bring those students in and talk to them. And when really it's not even happening at school. Now, where we do come into play here is a lot of times it's happening through the school email address that we give them or through the devices that we provide, such as the Chromebooks.
Now, do you have complete access to them to know what the students are doing at all times?
We do. And we have decided that, and there's another path you don't like to cross. Students don't want to think that their privacy is being invaded all the time. And I do respect that. But by the same token, what we have done, and we've talked to our tech folks, kids that we have, for whatever reason or another, we've red flagged because of things that have been brought to our attention or things that they're putting out there on social media. We will look at their emails periodically. And we've made students aware of that. that your devices are going to be pulled. We're going to check your emails and make sure that they're being used properly.
So let me throw an example out to you, just so people know, because we gave the definition, but sometimes it's like, well, what does that mean? So I'm going to bully you,
Okay.
and you tell me if that's actual bullying.
Okay.
Okay? You're fat and you can't even run in sports.
That comment in and of itself, one time, is not bullying. Now, if you do that to me repetitively, if you get other students to say, you know what, let's pick on him, let's continue, and it continues, and it gets to the point where I go home and I tell my parents, I don't even want to go to school anymore, then it's bullying. Absolutely.
So my and I'm just trying to clarify. So the gray area is, what if I still come to school? I'm not telling my parents that I don't want to go to school, but it's hurting me deeply.
Sure.
So, like, how do we determine that?
Well, and that's sad, and I hate when those situations happen. And what we would do there, and when we train teachers at the beginning of the year, and to be looking for bullying, is to have your eye out if you see that or you hear that. That student may not come to you, but by golly, if you see it, we still need to take care of it. So our professionals throughout the building need to have their eye open for that. And they will. A teacher will pull a child aside and say, listen, I know you haven't been yourself the last couple of weeks. What's going on? And they'll find it out that way. So we do find it out on numerous occasions, even when the student is reluctant to come forward.
Okay. So next question. Excuse me. The levy that was passed.
Sure.
Money was set aside for certain things. Federal money was given out during COVID.
Yes.
I'm not in the schools. I mean, I go to the school, but I'm not in them to walk around. Can you tell us some of the things that the money was used for, some updates that people that don't go into the school and so we don't get to see and know about?
Sure. And first of all, it was a 5-year levy. So keep in mind that the money is
slowly trickling.
Yes,
in
it's collected over a 5-year period. It doesn't all come in at one time. So certain projects that were high priority is where the money went first. And Union is where a lot of the money the first year was spent. They now have a geothermal system to heat and cool that building. I never thought we would come to a day when we needed air conditioning in Union. But the last several years up there, it's just gotten so hot that it was unbearable to have classes.
I thought it was always winter up there.
Yeah, that's what 4th of July. That's what you say, winter and 4th of July. But anyway, the geothermal system at Union is amazing to see that up and running. The pavement that has taken place on a lot of our parking lots, Maysville, Union also had pavement. This summer, Petersburg High School and the surrounding parking lots and even down at the football field and behind the high school are scheduled to be paved. If you ever go to a sporting event, every person there from Grant County gets in free. Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot to turn my phone off.
That's all right.
I'll turn it off right now.
That way people know this is real and going out as it goes.
That's right. I apologize.
That's
it will
all
be turned off, and I knew I would probably get some calls because of the weather situation today, but I apologize.
I appreciate you coming in, especially on a day where there's little sleetish out there in places, so thank you.
But anyway, if you go to a sporting event, you will see that every Grant County person gets in free. And that's just an amazing thing, and I think it's improved our attendance, and really it saves a person money if you look at what you pay over the course of a year to go to sporting events with your family and what your taxes cost you.
Yeah, especially if you have a couple of kids and a couple of different events.
Exactly.
Yeah. So anything else in school improvements that you can think of?
Not at this point. No, we're scheduled for more things. And let me explain to you too how this works. Because we have the levy in place, it frees up money that elsewhere we wouldn't have to do things. For example, we need a new HVAC system at Petersburg Elementary School. Now, that was not on the levy call. However, because we've had levy money to put out a lot of fires that needed done, like Union and so forth, we think we have between general funds that we've been able to save and by reshuffling federal money around, and Tony Oates is very good at that. He is extremely good at making sure that we follow all the ways that we're supposed to spend the money. We think we've been able to put enough money aside this summer to put the new HVAC system at Petersburg Elementary School. Long overdue. and is really needed. I know from being principal there, some days one room would be 90 degrees and another room would be 50 degrees. So that system's way outdated. So that's just one example of many. And we have other projects lined up. Some of the lighting needs at the football and baseball field and around the parking lots and so on. We're going to address, but
and I know we have the officer.
Yes, those are in there. We have aides. This one is extremely important. We have aides on every school bus. That was one thing that was asked for. Can you imagine driving and having 70 kids behind you, not in front of you, behind you, and it's hard enough to drive a school bus by itself, much less with 70 kids on that bus. We now have an aide on every bus, and that's paid for through the levy.
Okay.
And also, I've had Tony Oates do quarterly presentations to the board, and those are for public record on exactly how we're spending the levy money.
Where can we find that? Is that on website or do we?
Let me have Tony give you a call and let you know exactly where you can find everything that pertains to that. And then we also, I do press releases periodically through the Grant County Press when we're doing projects and so forth. But I'll have Tony get in touch with you and let you know where you can find everything.
Okay. Perfect. That way we can get that out because I'm sure people would be interested. Like, because if you're not in the school system or you don't walk in, you don't know.
Right.
So that's what we're doing. Another question. It really was a hot topic. It actually swung an election. Virginia went from blue to red, which is like unheard of, and that's Loudoun County.
Uh-huh.
And the boy student who said he identified as a female and went into the girls' bathroom, locker room, not sure which, but and then proceeded to rape one of the female students. The parents, rightfully so, were very, very upset. What do we have in place, or what can we put in place to protect our kids, all of them, from something like this happening?
Right. Well, and first of all, I'm glad we're Grant County, not Loudoun County. Yeah. I will say that. And that is a very unfortunate situation that you're talking about. Can we prevent everything from happening like that? I can't give a 100% that we can prevent it, but it starts with supervision at a very high level. Now, again, at the elementary level, it's much easier. At the high school, they're kind of free to go to the bathrooms and so forth as they choose.
As they choose, so they can.
Yeah, I mean, they're moving toward adulthood when they're 16, 17, 18 years old. You want to believe.
Well, I was meaning that I can choose to go to either a male or female.
No, I'm sorry. Okay. I meant they can choose to.
Okay, yeah.
We can't provide 24/7 supervision.
I got you now.
In the bathroom. So that is a place where students are unsupervised to some degree. But we have just we have fortunately not run into what you're talking about yet. The only thing I can tell you there, I think there was a situation like that at the high school either last year or the year before, and it was dealt with. We didn't have any kind of violation or anything, but we had a student we had to make accommodations for, and it was handled, and we followed all of the federal and state guidelines, and there were never any issues. So,
what are our state guidelines on that?
Well, as of right now, I don't think that we have anything. I think our legislature is working on some things, but right now I think we just follow what the feds say, and that is that we're to provide accommodations.
So do we have? I look at them like when you go to certain outlets and things, they have like a family bathroom that's one.
We had one available because there was a necessity. Right now, I'm not aware that there is a necessity. So, but when the need arose, there was one provided.
Okay. Can I ask one more question?
Sure.
I forgot to put it on here, and it wasn't on here, and I'm not trying to do a getcha question.
Not
I just
a problem.
Totally forgot. There was a lot of uproar over CIS.
Uh-huh.
Can you explain a little bit about it? Can you tell the curriculum that is being taught? I think that was what parents were kind of afraid of, what curriculum is going to be taught. Can you just kind of go over that a little bit? I'm sorry, I forgot to put it on there.
No, that's a very good question. Communities and schools, first and foremost, and again, this is misinformation. There is no curriculum. There's not a curriculum that goes with communities and schools. Communities and schools provides funding to place a social worker in every school. Then that social worker can, and then I can get into all the things that they can do here in just a little bit. But the first thing to keep in mind is that it's geared toward meeting the needs of students that teachers just can't do. And I can remember, again, going back to my days as principal, some of the best teachers I had would come to me at the end of the day and say, I'm not trained to handle some of the things that are coming my way. Whether the child saw domestic violence in the home last night, whether dad just up and left, whether there's substance abuse in the home, and the teacher would say it's affecting their learning, I would like to pull them aside and be able to just counsel them for a half an hour today, but I can't. I've got to move on. So to me, this is a godsend. These people that are put into our schools fill that void. And not only do they do that, but they provide things like toothpaste, toothbrushes. If a parent is a working parent and can't get a child to a dentist appointment, our communities and schools person can do that with parent permission.
So parent permission, a very good thing. Mm-hmm. The counseling.
Uh-huh.
Does the parent know about that? Does the parent have the right to say no? Are they notified? How does that work?
Yeah, that's another good question. There were opt-out forms that went home that gave. It said, this is what the program's about. If you feel you would want to opt your child out of part of the program, let us know, and we'll make sure that they're opted out of that.
Okay, can I push on this just a little and ask, why was it an opt-out form when most are opt-in forms? I think that was confusing to a lot of people.
I do think that was confusing, and I think I would say this. I'm not sure that we were prepared because this program was working so well in so many other counties that I think we just thought that we'd put the program into place and off it would go. And then when there was backlash, then I think we said, okay, maybe we need to relook at this, and we want the program, but if parents don't want their kids to participate, we need to do something. So that's when the opt-out, I think, was developed early in the fall for that reason.
Yeah, it was just, I think that was a major source of confusion with a lot of people. It's like, wait, am I signing this? And then you have just some parents who, I got to sign this, Johnny.
Right.
And,
Right. But I do want to reemphasize there's no curriculum whatsoever. None.
So nothing's being taught with this.
Nothing's being taught by that person.
Doesn't have to be a class that you have to do to get the monies from the federal, or I don't know if it's federal government.
It is federal money. It is federal money. But it's based on meeting the needs of the kids that otherwise couldn't be met because the teacher just has overwhelmed with teaching responsibilities.
Now, when I talked to Sheena, your Hardy County counterpart, she had said that there were local organizations that were also helping out. Is the same thing true for Grant County?
Yes.
Okay. And are they?
Sometimes we get clothing donations. Sometimes we get food donations.
Are they churches or civic organizations?
There are individuals too. And we have the program Project Equip has kind of worked hand in hand with communities and schools now. So a lot of good has come out of this. A lot of good.
Okay. Well, I do thank you for spending some time with me today. I want to give you a chance to speak to the public, something that we might have missed that you want to tell, some good news that's happening, anything. The floor is yours to kind of take us out.
Well, first of all, I want to thank you for the opportunity. And anytime that we can get the word out as to what actually is happening, I think it's a positive. I'll just share a couple things with you real quickly. I don't want to take up too much of your time, but we have reestablished the steering committee. And the steering committee is made up of folks within the community from a variety of backgrounds. I have teachers. I have retired teachers. I have service personnel. I have a board member. I have just a community leader. I have an administrator from each building. And we are kind of a liaison between the community, and the school system.
So what is the steer? Is that what you steering
committee?
Okay, so what is that? What's the purpose behind it?
It's just these are folks that have identified themselves. We've put it out into the press that if you feel your voice isn't being heard, and you feel that it could be heard through a retired teacher, if that's maybe who you relate to, or you feel it could be heard through a community leader, whatever. Look at someone that serves on that steering committee and bring that legitimate concern to them, and we will address it as a committee, and I will bring it in front of the board, and we'll move forward with it. So that's just one way that we're trying to be transparent and involve the community and helping us do two things: solve the problems that exist and move the school system forward. Okay. That's just one example I could give you. I do want to mention, from a curriculum standpoint, that we were, the 55 counties, I believe on the test last year, we were 8th out of 55 counties in reading, and 12th in math. I may be off a little bit there, but I know we were in the top 12 in both. So we're making some really good things happen within our classrooms. And then me personally, I have made it a personal goal to visit every classroom in the county this year. And I'm probably about 2/3 of the way through with that. And I try to be in every school once a week just to make myself visible. So.
Okay. Well, I appreciate it. Thank you for being willing to answer my questions and spend some time with us today. And I'll let you get back now and answer all your phone calls about why we had to cancel and all of that.
That's right. I'll have Tony Oates get you some information on the levy. And if you have any other questions as a result of this that you need further clarification for, please don't hesitate to call me.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sarah.
Appreciate it.
Have a good day.
Okay. Remember, we are on YouTube, Rumble, and Facebook. It's Explore Grant County. Like, follow, and subscribe. Everyone have a great day.